Take a look on the screen. I have a book recommendation for you, and you'll see where this book fits into my remarks this morning. It's called Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks, written, I think, about 6 years ago, 2019. And he was a writer for the, I'm sorry, you know what, New York Times. He doesn't do that anymore. But I'd say Greg described him as the political analyst, but the book is outstanding. As I said, it'll tie into what I have to say to you this morning. How many here saw the memorial service for Charlie Kirk Sunday? Most of us, yes. Well, we heard about it, we read about it. Well, we saw parts of it on the news, and it was a very moving and touching event. Many, no pun intended, see it or saw it as a turning point for America as to what took place and what was said regarding Charlie and regarding our country. There were numerous testimonies, and these testimonies were, for the most part, testimonies of faith. For the most part, testimonies of faith. Although some politics got involved, and I have to remind you before we begin that religion is not politics, and politics should not be religion. Religion should have an influence on politics, but they are, in effect, separate categories. Religion should have an effect on politics and on politicians, but they are not the same. Keep that in mind. When we try to put the two together, we do damage to religion, because what happens under various regimes is that the regime does not always reflect the values of true religion. Many people have said, this is rather widespread, that this seemed like another great awakening in the United States. A great awakening. How many are familiar when you went to school they talked about the Great Awakening? Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And people will talk about different awakenings in the United States. I'll give you some of the main awakenings. They have to do with a religious awakening, or at least how religious inspired a change in behavior for a period of time in our country. First Great Awakening, I'm sure most of you remember reading about this, came about 1740. We were not even a nation yet. And the big name on that one was the great Protestant divine Jonathan Edwards. And these divines, the reverends in early America, were instrumental in forming the people insofar as the importance of freedom of religion in our country and separation of church and state. So that's the First Great Awakening, very, very powerful movement, had effects to the present day with our own government, our own constitution. Second Great Awakening took place around 1840, and it took place began anyway, in upstate New York. Some of you might remember reading about the burnt-over districts. It didn't mean that there was a fire in New York State, western New York State. What it meant was that the Holy Spirit took control of people, and the faith, mostly evangelical Methodist, spread across the country. Great fervor for the faith, and numerous churches were planted way out even into the Midwest, which was very, very rural territory in those days. Third Great Awakening comes around, I say, Civil War time. And this Great Awakening had a tremendous influence on abolition, saying how evil slavery was. It also had an impact on people who were involved in the temperance movement. No drinking. I don't know if that was good or bad, but that's what it was. And the fourth one had to do with basically social justice issues, late 19th century up into 1920, and they were very much involved with the social problems of the day. You might remember, read about Jane Addams and Hull House finding a place for poor people to live when times were bad for them. Took in young girls, taught them to have trades, things like that. And then there was also the development of different organizations like the YMCA. Pretty good, huh? You know, it came from there, YMCA. It was called the Young Men's Christian Association. And also the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army, of course, is still with us today. So those are the Great Awakenings and this religious fervor that were inspired by religion and gospel values made changes in our country and established institutions which were for the good of the people of our country. As I said, a lot of people are saying that, well, what we witnessed in Texas last Sunday was the sign of another Great Awakening in the United States. I think it is, but I'm not ready to say that it is going to be something that is going to have a lasting impact, although I hope it does. And the reason why I'm concerned about it is that although it was a very powerful expression of faith, I'll talk about a couple of the people that spoke, it also showed us that some people in very high places use religion to promote a different agenda. Now, let me just take, for example, some of the speakers that were there. I must say some of them were just fantastic. First of all, I have to commend Marco Rubio. He gave a beautiful talk. He summarized the truths of the faith. He talked about the God becoming man. He talked about the death of the Lord winning our salvation. He talked about the resurrection and our hope to share in the resurrection. Who would have thought that we'd get anything like that out of a politician with over 1 million people watching and millions around the world and over 100,000 people in a stadium? Just fantastic statements of salvation history. Also to commend Vice President Vance. Now, the Vice President, during the week after Charlie was shot, he filled in as a host for his program, his podcast. And the Vice President began by reciting the Creed. Could you imagine that? Vice President of the United States reciting the Creed. Those things that we believe as Christians, and which I've talked about in the past, how important that creed is, because it tells us what we believe regarding God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and the Church. Fantastic. Lastly, and this is very positive, or one of the highest points of the event, was Erica Kirk's beautiful, powerful talk. And she talked about forgiveness, forgiving one's enemies, forgiving those who hurt you, and forgiving the young man that shot her husband. That was powerful. That's the gospel. Love your enemies. That's what I'm telling you. You gotta read the book. You read the book. Love your enemies. Arthur C. Brooks. Right. Now, something happened though that was inconsistent with the event. And I hope it was inconsistent and not just an indication of an underlying belief or underlying power that was being manipulated throughout the event. Unfortunately, the president said something that was most disturbing. First of all, he didn't get political. And I don't think that event was meant to be a MAGA rally. I hope not. But he said something that was jarring. After all that expression of Christianity, after Erica got up and forgave the assassin of her husband, the president says, "I hate my opponents. I hate my opponents. That has no place in the Great Awakening. It has no place, if you want to call it, a big tent rally for Christ. It has no place. Why? It is not the gospel. It is not the gospel. During the week, he went a step further, which perhaps is even more revealing. Some of you may have heard that there is now a walk of fame in the White House. You know what the walk of fame is? It's pictures of all the presidents of the United States. And when he got to the picture, it was supposed to be Joe Biden. There is an auto pen. An auto pen representing the President of the United States. Do you know what hatred does? Hatred shows contempt for someone you perceive to be your enemy. What does contempt do? It tries to humiliate and to annihilate. That is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it said to me, and I'm not judging a soul, President Trump said not too long ago he wanted to go to heaven. If you hate your enemy, and you're willing to humiliate a political opponent, that's not the way Jesus tells us that we can go to heaven. Jesus tells us, love your enemy. Do good to those who hate you. That is the message of the gospel. Abraham Lincoln knew this. Some of you may be familiar with his wonderful second inaugural address. If you have never read the second inaugural, please do. At the end of the address, Lincoln talking to a divided country, and he knew it was divided, where brother killed brother, north and south. He said, with charity to all and malice toward none, we must begin to heal what divides this great nation of ours. Lincoln had no particular church he belonged to, but he read the Bible. I'm going to encourage the President to do the same. And I'm going to ask all of you to pray for the President. I want the President to go to heaven. I want everyone to go to heaven. But in order to go to heaven, we have to embrace the gospel of Jesus Christ. The President says he wants to make America great again. That is wonderful. But if he embraces Jesus, he'll make America better than ever before. I love you.